Lewis Hamilton, the newly crowned 7-time Formula One world champion, has driven some of the most memorable races in the history of the sport. The 2006 GP2 champion announced himself to the world in style after his move to partner world champion Fernando Alonso in the McLaren F1 team. Hamilton racked up some solid practice sessions at the 2007 season opener in Melbourne, but couldn't quite take that form into qualifying, starting from P4 on his Formula One debut. But the Stevenage rookie was determined to show his worth, laying down a marker at turn 1 that set the tone for the rest of his career.
Hamilton's had some manners put on him by Kubica, but he comes round the outside. He's also gone round Alonso. Stunning start by Lewis Hamilton, up into third place.
First race, first corner. In making a mighty move on your new teammate, the reigning double world champion, Hamilton had proven straight away he was the real deal. Hamilton's pace over a single lap is mind-blowing, and he holds the all-time qualifying record for F1 pole positions. Yet some laps still stand out, such as at Singapore in 2018. Locked in a titanic battle with Sebastian Vettel, Hamilton arrived at Marina Bay with a car unsuited to the twisty, technical nature of the street circuit, but made a nonsense of this supposed Achilles heel and conjured up a truly magical qualifying performance. Half a second off Vettel's best time heading into qualifying, he only narrowly avoided a disastrous Q1 exit.
Only a 39.4 for Lewis.
So if the cut-offs are 1:39.5 between success and failure, he is right on the cusp.
And then fell short of Kimi Räikkönen and Max Verstappen's pace in Q2. But as the British driver swung his Mercedes through the floodlit streets of Singapore on his first flying lap in Q3, he came alive. At one with his car, as he set the timing screens purple.
That one felt the most complete lap that I think I may have ever done. We did not expect that, no one expected that, and all of a sudden this lap out of nowhere, it was just beautiful, just flowing, beautiful. It was like a dance. It was freaking awesome.
The clock stopped at 1 minute 36.015, over 3 seconds up on Vettel's pole time from the previous year. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff called the lap Stardust, as Hamilton, still shaking from the enormity of his lap, dealt a major blow to Vettel's title ambitions. In a car which, despite its overall dominance, had no right to be on the front row that weekend. He followed it up with a victory, and in so doing, placed one hand on a 5th World Championship crown. A comfortable pole position at Hockenheim in 2008 proved Hamilton was in form, but a poor strategy call would force Lewis to pull off an epic recovery drive. Hamilton had led from the off and was over 11 seconds clear of Felipe Massa's Ferrari at the halfway point. But when Timo Glock's Toyota suffered a suspension failure and crashed, there was a safety car. Cue most of the field peeling into the pits for fresh rubber, but McLaren believed the safety car period would be short, and their driver would have enough time to rebuild a gap before pitting. But they were wrong.
Why have McLaren not brought Hamilton in? That's the big question.
And when he did come in 9 laps after the restart, he was left down in 5th with just 17 laps to go. Teammate Heikki Kovalainen didn't pose too much of a problem, but ahead lay championship rival Massa and his old GP2 adversary, Nelson Piquet Jr., who was leading by virtue of a perfectly timed pit stop. Massa was struggling with his brakes and Hamilton dived by into second, with Piquet's Renault in his sights. He was soon on the Brazilian's gearbox and on lap 60 went down the inside at the hairpin to reclaim the lead. Hamilton had come back from the brink, and his immaculate response to the tricky tactics was a joy to behold.
Great drive, Lewis. I'm very sorry that we made it a little bit more difficult for you, but wanted you to have the opportunity of driving a great car and hope you enjoyed it. But absolutely fantastic job. Well done.
That's okay, Ron. That's a good excuse. Don't worry. And that's what you hired me for, so it's all good.
Canada 2007 was only Hamilton's 6th Formula One race, but he had already stood on the podium 5 times, just not on the top step. Yet. But Montreal was a weekend for firsts, as he stormed to his first career pole position and drove with a maturity beyond his 22 years to hold off Alonso at the start and build up a gap to his competitors.
Alonso goes to the outside as he made it. He's gone for broke, and it's cost him.
Hamilton's driving was absolute perfection as he sailed serenely on through a chaotic afternoon where no less than 4 safety cars constantly cut back his hard-earned lead to 0. But he refused to buckle under the pressure and executed restarts to perfection, despite never having done so in Formula One before. And he came through the carnage to make history. The first black driver to win a Formula One Grand Prix.
Lewis Hamilton wins!
And continued on an unprecedented run of success for a rookie racer at the top level of motorsport. With Hamilton's attacking credentials undeniable, 2019's Monaco Grand Prix demonstrated his mastery of that other vital side to the art of the racing driver: defending. In the wake of the death of his friend and mentor Niki Lauda, who had been so instrumental in persuading Hamilton to join Mercedes, emotions were high in the Principality. The race started well, leading from the off after taking a dominant pole position until a puncture and floor damage for local hero Charles Leclerc brought out the safety car, and the leaders into the pits on lap 11. Cue a strategic error from Mercedes that gave Hamilton a mountain to climb, while his rivals Max Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel went back out on hard tyres. Mercedes opted for the mediums, and the world champion now faced a daunting 64-lap stint on the softer compound.
I don't know what you're thinking when you keep these tyres on, man. You need to hope for a miracle.
They have put him on a set of tyres that should do about 50 laps for 67 laps.
But once again, the crisis simply showed the measure of the man as he protected his delicate tyres and defended for his life against Verstappen, one of the most aggressive drivers on the grid, on tyres with minimal tread on the most psychologically demanding circuit in the world. The Dutchman spent 60 laps trying to sneak, slip and nudge past, with Hamilton showing Herculean defensive stamina and tenacity to stay ahead, all the while conscious he dare not overwork his fragile tyres. With 3 laps left, the Dutchman went for a killer pass down the inside into the chicane, but Hamilton's 6th sense kicked in.
Verstappen down the inside on Lewis Hamilton, they make contact! Hamilton has to cut the chicane!
And that was as close as he'd come.
Hamilton wins the Monaco Grand Prix!
That one's for Niki, mate. That one is for Niki.
That was definitely probably the hardest race I think I've had. I really was fighting with the spirit of Niki. I know he'll be looking down, and I know he would take his hat off today.
A swashbuckling racer's performance helped Hamilton beat Mark Webber and Fernando Alonso at the Nürburgring in 2011. A stunning qualifying effort, 1.2 seconds faster than his McLaren teammate Jenson Button, secured Hamilton a surprise front row start, P2 beside Webber. And he got the better of the Australian at the off, while Alonso's Ferrari soon got ahead of Sebastian Vettel and the other Red Bull, setting up a 3-way battle for victory. Hamilton held off Webber until a small mistake into the chicane on lap 12.
He's gone deep, he's gone too deep.
And Webber's going to be through here. Any cares left, he'll deploy it. He's got the inside line. I don't see how Lewis can defend against that. He tries.
Mark getting out of shape on the apex, desperately trying to get on the throttle. So Lewis now then is back in the slipstream, and he comes up the inside using the extra straight line speed of the McLaren. That's not DRS, that's just pure speed, and Alonso watching very closely too.
An earlier pit stop from Red Bull then allowed Webber to jump back ahead, but he couldn't shake off his pursuer, and after the second round of stops, he was hung out to dry when he tried to pass Hamilton as the McLaren emerged from its tyre change.
Webber though, can he go around the outside of turn 2 and reclaim that lead? I can't see Lewis yielding that one too easily, and he doesn't.
Hamilton then showed how it should be done by passing Alonso, the Spaniard emerging just ahead to his own stop.
He's round the outside, he's going to make this one stick. Alonso was caught napping.
The Briton secured just his 2nd win of the season, but it was vintage Hamilton, an offensive masterclass on a day when the driver made all the difference.
Great job, guys! Great job! That was amazing!
Time and again, Hamilton has proven himself a master of qualifying, when man and machine are pushing in perfect harmony on the ragged edge of adhesion. And at the 2020 Styrian Grand Prix, Hamilton produced one of the finest and bravest driving displays of his career. The conditions in Austria were such that many had doubts as to whether qualifying would happen at all on Saturday, after final practice had been cancelled. But despite a handful of spins and crashes, qualifying continued, and Hamilton was left trading fastest sector times with Max Verstappen as the two protagonists duelled for pole position, head and shoulders above the rest. And Verstappen blinked first, after initially setting the fastest first sector on his final lap to raise hopes he could topple Hamilton. The Dutch master spun at the penultimate corner. And whether he didn't know or didn't care, the man from Stevenage kept his foot to the floor to emerge from the mist and smash his previous best.
Look how treacherous the conditions are! Lewis Hamilton on pole position!
What a lap, champion's drive.
It was freaking awesome.
The scintillating lap had given the Mercedes driver pole by an extraordinary 1.2 seconds. Hamilton's decision to swap his race-winning McLaren for an up-and-coming Mercedes for 2013 was seen as a risky move by many in the F1 paddock. And although their first season together was far from perfect, there were some truly remarkable moments along the way, and none more so than in Hungary. After securing a surprise pole at a sun-baked Hungaroring in late July, not even Hamilton gave himself a chance in the race, declaring a win would be a miracle. Expecting his car to rapidly burn away its rear tyres, it soon became clear the rubber was holding firm in the heat, and Hamilton needed no invitation taking advantage. After pitting from the lead, he wasted no time in passing his former teammate with a no-nonsense manoeuvre. And another bold pass on Mark Webber after his second stop left him free and clear at the front, where he could truly put the hammer down.
It's a first win for Mercedes! Hamilton wins the Hungarian Grand Prix!
It was his 22nd race win, but crucially, his first victory for the Silver Arrows. Ringing a win from the car at a circuit that did not favour it was a demonstration of the decisive judgment and error-free execution that would become his hallmark in the years to come, and the first step on what would become a history-making relationship. Perhaps the best example of Hamilton's never-say-die attitude was the 2018 German Grand Prix. After his Mercedes suffered a hydraulic problem in qualifying, he lined up P14 at Hockenheim, with championship rival and home favourite Sebastian Vettel on pole. The British driver had never won a race starting from this far back, but from lights out, he drove like a man possessed.
And Hamilton might just have picked up a place on Sergei Sorokin. Hamilton into turn one has picked off Esteban Ocon. Down the inside he goes on Charles Leclerc, and he's put himself into the points. Carlos Sainz is the next to be ticked off the list. Ultra soft tyres.
That is going to be one fast car now.
With Vettel leading, Hamilton blasted through the pack. By lap 14 he was fifth, but winning still looked like a very long shot. Hamilton's supremacy as the rain began to fall was never more evident. But although he was the fastest driver on the circuit by some margin, Vettel continued to build his lead. But on lap 52, fortune swung.
And out of the race, Sebastian Vettel! He has been leading almost from start to finish!
The safety car was called. Bottas came in, but confusion over the radio meant Hamilton aborted his entry to the pits, driving across the grass to continue.
Stay up. In.
Hey, man.
No, sorry, mate. Hey, just go. Good.
When Raikkonen pitted on the next lap, Hamilton took over at the front, with Bottas behind, who went on the attack as soon as the race restarted.
Bottas switcheroo at the hairpin, now it's wheel to wheel with Hamilton. Hamilton has the lead still. Lewis Hamilton from 14th on the grid wins the German Grand Prix.
His celebration was iconic, and he took the lead in a fight for the championship that he would not lose. Despite coming closer to the title in his debut season than any rookie had before, Hamilton still sought consistency. And after two pointless outings in Canada and France, he'd slumped from first to 4th in the drivers' standings in 2008 and needed a happy homecoming to keep the critics at bay. A disappointing qualifying saw him start 4th as he struggled with his setup, but on Sunday he delivered in style.
Great immediate getaway by Kovalainen, but Raikkonen is on the attack. And look at Hamilton down the inside. The crowd goes mad. Kovalainen's not having that. He's squeezing his teammate. Hamilton has to back out of it.
On lap 5, he took the lead going into Stowe, having put relentless pressure on his McLaren teammate Heikki Kovalainen. And when the rain returned, he put new intermediate tyres on his McLaren and was in a class of his own, dropping his nearest challenger Kimi Raikkonen by 22 seconds within 5 laps. But the moment of truth came when the rain intensified to a deluge. As his rivals scrambled to take full wets, the 23-year-old Hamilton trusted his touch on the intermediates. And although briefly slower than those on the full wet, he held his nerve and kept his car on track as drama ensued around him.
No, Nelson!
You're going to see more of that. He's gone off in a straight line. That's exactly what we've been talking about. Well, the BMW's off. That'll be in the gravel. That's going no further. Kubica out of the race.
As the tarmac dried, he didn't have to pit again, and no one could match his pace. He was consistently more than 5 seconds a lap faster than some of his pursuers. Despite one brief trip across the grass, by the flag, he'd lapped the entire field up to 4th place.
Lewis Hamilton putting a lap on one of his main rivals, Kimi Raikkonen.
And Alonso.
And was 68 seconds ahead of Nick Heidfeld in 2nd place, claiming F1's largest margin of victory for 13 years, unprecedented in the modern era.
He came here to Silverstone and he has shown them all with one of the great drives. Lewis Hamilton wins the British Grand Prix.
We've bloody done it. Fantastic.
The 90,000 stand has won for Lewis Hamilton.
With his maturity, racecraft and car control, he'd silenced his critics and pulled off a virtuoso wet weather drive in appalling conditions and arguably his finest ever. In just his 2nd season of Formula One, he displayed the hallmarks of a genius at the wheel. And, as it turned out, that's exactly what he was.